Today I want to talk about extensive reading, also known as free voluntary reading, because I think reading is such a powerful way to improve your language skills, regardless of where you are in the language. I'm going to refer you to a document that was shown to me from Cambridge University and also another one from Oxford University. Before getting into the subject, it's interesting to note, because I got curious doing research for this video, the market for language learning worldwide in 2023 was over 60 billion US dollars, and it's projected to reach $115 billion in the year 2032. So it's an enormous market. Apparently, 2/3 of that market is for learning English. Now, given that it's not expensive to buy a book, we can buy books online. There's a limitless amount of material available online that we can read, that we can access, that we can read and look up words. It is amazing that so much money is spent on the language learning industry, on things, for example, like LingQ. Reading is powerful, but maybe people are discouraged from reading or don't think they can do it on their own, or they feel they need to have a teacher to guide them or a system to guide them. But in fact, a lot can be achieved by a motivated learner who is willing to read. But there are issues and problems, and I want to get into those. First of all, if you refer to the link I left, you will see what extensive reading or free voluntary reading is. It's basically just reading, but it's reading material that's of interest, that's not too difficult, reading on your own, reading at a good speed, reading silently. I would add, although they don't mention it, it's probably a good idea to also have the audio for the material that you are reading. Now, you'll see in this link that the Cambridge study points out certain obvious benefits to extensive reading. Should be obvious, but may not be obvious to every language learner. And that is that reading improves our ability to read, obviously. It improves our vocabulary. We encounter words in context with other words. We get to see how they work with other words. We get a better sense of grammar. It's a massive exposure to the language. It's easy to do. You do it on your own. When I was learning Chinese in Hong Kong over 50 years ago, my major activity was reading. And I would scour the bookstores of Hong Kong to find readers with vocabulary lists behind each chapter, which I would review before reading and then after reading. There wasn't so much audio available in those days. Reading is powerful. I also consider that, especially if you listen to the same material that you're reading, it's kind of almost like speaking, because when you are reading on your own in a foreign language, you are sub-vocalizing. So therefore, it helps you to get to where you can speak. It helps you with your comprehension, grasp of grammar, seeing words in context. All of these things are greatly, assisted by free voluntary reading. Now, the Cambridge study refers to what they call obstacles to free voluntary reading or extensive reading. And most of those obstacles seem to refer to the resistance from teachers who are reluctant to see the learners go off on their own ahead of what the teacher wants to teach, or that the classroom, student will spend his or her time reading rather than studying grammar or doing the other things, the activities that the teacher wants to do. In other words, the teacher is reluctant to give up their teacher time, classroom time, to free voluntary reading, although it has been demonstrated that free voluntary reading has all of these benefits. So the resistance on the part of some teachers is considered the main obstacle, but I don't see that as the main obstacle. To me, the biggest problem or the biggest obstacle when it comes to free voluntary reading is vocabulary. Some of the proponents of free voluntary reading or extensive reading suggest that free voluntary reading should be based on no more than 4 words per page of unknown words, or a couple of percent unknown words, for it to be a pleasant experience. And that the student should be encouraged to guess or infer the meaning of words that they don't know. To me, that's wrong. Actually, I shouldn't say it's wrong, but I should say that the strategy when it comes to free voluntary reading depends on who you are and where you are in the language. Obviously, if you're a school child and you've got 10, 12 years or more to improve your vocabulary and to develop that sense of joy of reading, then free voluntary reading with a very small number of unknown words is a good thing. Again, I would avoid the sort of teaching reading strategies, inferring strategies. Just let the child read. Let the words they don't understand go by. They'll eventually eventually figure them out one way or another. So that's free voluntary reading in the sense that Krashen describes it for people in school, probably a better use of the student's time than listening to the teacher in many cases. However, when we as adults, and I include, say, students at a university, say at a foreign university where they're having to take courses in a foreign language, adults wanting to learn a language, we are in a bigger hurry. We don't have 12 years to gradually, slowly increase our vocabulary. We need to increase our vocabulary more quickly. And therefore, the strategy has to be different. We can't be dealing with just 2% unknown words. When we start in the language, of course, we have no known words, or depending on how different the language is to a language we know. So typically, my strategy is I go to the mini stories, or you go to other easy content, lots of repetition, so we are able to knock off the 500, most common words of the language. We all know that frequency declines very, very quickly, and now we have to deal with chasing those low frequency words that are very important and yet don't appear that often. So then, in my experience, we need to deal with a larger number of unknown words. Either we, say, using LINK, we look them up and we hope to acquire these words by seeing them often enough, or we just let them go. You can have free voluntary reading with a book where there's a lot of unknown words. I never bother inferring or guessing. It just flows by me. But there is some benefit in encountering those words in this free voluntary reading format. However, it's frustrating if you forever don't know what the words mean, and that's essentially what's at the origin of LINK. Typically, early on, when I'm starting in a language, it might have 30% unknown words, and I admit that that's difficult. And we track these statistics at LINK, and of course, initially, you may know a bunch of words that the system doesn't yet know that you know, so that might also push the number up to 50%. If I were to go into Dutch, for example, it'll show me a large percentage of words that I don't know, when in fact, in the case of Dutch, I can infer the meaning of those words. But in Turkish, that's not the case. Very difficult for me to infer the meaning of words unless they're connected to words that I already know. So in terms of the percentage that I can deal with, 15%, 15 to 20% is an acceptable level of unknown words for me. And so I develop a strategy which says at an early stage, I want material that's 5 minutes long. I want maybe 15 to 20% unknown words. I want that to be about 20 words that I'm trying to learn, 25 words that I've never seen before. And that is kind of my strategy. And it's an optimum position. It's a sweet spot in terms of increasing my vocabulary so that I can eventually reach the stage where I can read a paper book, because I will have enough vocabulary so that I won't be guessing at every second or third word, but at the same time, it won't be, only 3-4 words per page that are unknown to me, because then I'm not increasing my vocabulary. Make no mistake, we need a lot of vocabulary, even low frequency vocabulary, in order to enjoy free voluntary reading. So we have to invest that time in getting our vocabulary level up. But while we are doing that, we are increasing our familiarity with the language. Again, the research has shown that people who read a lot, they write better, they have better grammar, they speak better. There's tremendous benefits to this free voluntary reading, but you have to be prepared for it. You have to build yourself up to be able to do it. If you try to do that from day one, I think it'll be quite difficult. One other strategy I have is to stay in sort of a limited range, a limited content area for a while. So that if I'm doing history of, say, in this case, the Ottoman Empire, I will stay with that. So the same vocabulary will repeat. I have found that typically fiction is much more difficult. There's a far broader range of words. And given the tremendous, precipitous decline of frequency of words in any language, you want to, have a strategy where you have a greater likelihood of meeting the same words or related words again. So to summarize, many people like video. I'm not a big fan. I like video, I like film, but for language learning, video is less effective. There's a lot of dead time. Sometimes it's difficult to catch what people are saying, whereas reading is pure words. And to that extent, listening is pure words. So that if we're talking not just about what's enjoyable, but how do we improve our vocabulary, how do we improve our grasp of the language, reading and its associated activity of listening, to my mind, are the way to go. And yes, you want to consume more and more of the language, more and more extensive, more and more free voluntary. And above all, you don't want to have too much teacher intervention. Teachers love to have pre-reading questions and post-reading questions and comprehension questions and instructing you on how to infer infer and critical thinking, I always quote Ruben Alves, who says, "Nothing destroys the enjoyment of reading as much as being asked questions about what you have read." I may not understand it perfectly, but it's what I understood. I'm happy with that. I don't want to be challenged. I just want to enjoy my reading. The essence of free voluntary reading is to be free of those kinds of impositions from the teacher and free to explore the language, following a strategy where you're gradually increasing your ability to take on more and more difficult, potentially more and more interesting material, longer material, and that way you will eventually achieve your language learning goal. So with that, I wanted to leave you those references to people talking about free voluntary reading and lend my support to free voluntary reading, one of Krashen's big bugbears, extensive reading as a relatively inexpensive and effective way to improve your language skills in any language.